Tighten your lines as we get ready to sail the 7 seas on the Political Pirate Podcast. Join Captain Ted Yoho and the salty dog John Martin as they search far and wide for the greatest treasure of all, the truth. From local Florida news to nationwide stories and the globe beyond, we've got it all mapped out. Now here's your hosts, the salty dog John Martin and Captain Ted Yoho.
Well, good Monday morning to you. Coming to you live here to 3Ps, the Political Pirate Podcast, with the host of your show, the old salty dog John Martin, and Mr. Ted Yoho, the captain of our pirate ship. Good morning, Ted. How are you?
Good morning, John. Always glad to be here with you on the stage, and I see you're in Steve Spurrier's Gridiron Grill.
Absolutely. We're here at it's become like the beating heart of the Gator Nation here at Spurrier's Gridiron Grill and Celebration Point. If you've never been here before, it's real easy to find. If you're coming down the interstate and you see the big Bass Pro shop here, that exit right there, Celebration Point, Spurrier's Gridiron Grill is within that, and you owe it to yourself to give it a shot.
You sure do. Great food, great memorabilia, and it's the Museum of the Florida Gators.
Absolutely.
And every now and then you'll see Coach Spurrier there too.
Yeah, and you'll see his smiling face later on in an advertisement. But if you want to join part of a winning team, call Freddie. Look at that little tagline that says, call Freddie, make that call, be a part of supporting the cause and joining the winning team of the Political Pirate Podcast. Well,
yeah, Ted, that's true. And our word is getting out and it's spreading around the nation. That's good.
Absolutely. Well, Ted, I put a headline here that Donald Trump, a president of consequence. I can tell you that. Whether you love him, hate him, or indifferent, which is pretty hard to believe, Donald Trump is definitely putting his stamp on the world, really, in this sense. And we're talking specifically about what's happening in Iran right now. But there's no disputing, Ted, that Donald Trump is somebody to be dealt with, good, bad, or whatever. You can't ignore the man.
Yeah, I had to think of Putin when you said that. There's no disputing. Vladimir Putin should not dispute what Donald Trump is doing. It is. The status quo has been broken under this president. And a lot of those things are long-running, just bad policies and foreign policy by other nations. You look at Venezuela, it's a failed state. It's a dictator state. No free elections, and Maduro was a bad guy. There's no doubt about that. And you look at Iran. For 47 years, Iran has been this kind of a burr under the saddle, just an irritation in the world and causing a lot of the disruption in the world as far as oil, as far as conflict, as far as terrorist attack. Iran is the center of that and the epicenter of that. And people have talked for years, Iran's a problem. We should do something. In fact, John McCain had that song. He kind of mimicked bomb, 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 bomb Iran. And, it's just been going on for this long, John. Right or wrong, something's been done. And sometimes you've got to do something to end it. With them threatening to bomb death to America, death to the infidels, burning our flag. And they went from, when we'll talk more about this, the enrichment program of their atomic program. We'll talk more about that and why this is justified.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, before we go any further, I want to put out my thoughts and prayers to the soldiers and the families, but the soldiers that specifically have been killed and injured. I just got word this morning when I was listening to the radio coming in that one of the 5 that was injured succumbed to his wounds. So now I think we've got 4 soldiers that have paid the ultimate price and 4 that are critically injured. So we certainly send prayers out to those family and friends and colleagues of those soldiers, and certainly
Absolutely.
In general for our men and women in that are fighting for our freedom right now.
We sure do. You just don't want anybody in that situation. But no telling what would happen had Iran gotten a nuclear bomb. They wouldn't have to have a ballistic missile. They could put it on a tanker off of New York, Miami, Los Angeles, and explode it there, and it would have a lot of devastation and a lot of people would die. So
Yeah,
we
and
appreciate the service members willing to serve.
I also want to throw a shout out to our allies, especially the Israelis, but certainly the allies over there and anywhere around the world that are supporting our American soldiers. Where you mentioned what has happened in the past 47 years ago, okay, so is when the this current regime, not the individual himself, but the
Right.
Grand Ayatollah took over in the Islamic Revolution, was 47 years ago. And you talked about past presidents, and I'm going to play a few of them here in just a minute. But past presidents, people have been talking about doing something about this for 47 years. And even
Exactly.
Ronald Reagan, which I'm not going to play a clip of him, but even Ronald Reagan is great. And I'm a big fan of Ronald Reagan. He essentially didn't do anything either when you talk about allowing this. So the list is long. It wasn't until Donald J. Trump came on the scene, love him, hate him, or whatever, he actually is doing what pretty much every president, Democrat or Republican, has stated that needed to be done for the last 47 years, Ted.
It is a game changer. People have talked about it. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. They can't do that. And it goes back and forth. But the threat mounts because those countries become more powerful and their technology advances. And so Donald Trump, like him or not, he is the president of action. And it is changing the world status quo. And we're going to talk more about some of the things I see behind the scenes that led to this. And, we'll go on. I know you've got that video you want to play.
Yeah, let's play this one. This is Jimmy Carter during the hostage crisis over there, which was the first thing that really happened after the Islamic takeover. Check this out.
We continue to face a grave situation in Iran, where our embassy has been seized and more than 60 American citizens continue to be held as hostages in an attempt to force unacceptable demands on our country. We're using every available channel to protect the safety of the hostages and to secure their release. Along with the families of the hostages, I have welcomed and I appreciate the restraint that has been shown by Americans during this crisis. We must continue to exhibit such constraint. Despite the intensity of our emotions, the lives of our people in Iran are at stake. I must emphasize the gravity of the situation. It's vital to the United States and to every other nation that the lives of diplomatic personnel and other citizens abroad be protected, and that we refuse to permit the use of terrorism and the seizure and the holding of hostages to impose political demands. No one should underestimate the resolve of the American government and the American people in this matter. It is necessary to eliminate any suggestion that economic pressures can weaken our stand on basic issues of principle. Our position must be clear. I am ordering that we discontinue purchasing of any oil from Iran for delivery to this country.
Me in that video of Jimmy Carter was when he talked about no one should not understand the resolve of the American people and the government. And I wish that were true when he said it. It wasn't obviously true when he said it. I'm not saying he was lying. I'm simply saying they didn't back it up with any action. Is there any doubt in your mind that if President Trump came on for whatever reason and said no one should doubt our resolve, that anyone would doubt their resolve?
No, not at all. I think this is a warning to other countries. And again, I think the play you're seeing here with Venezuela, with what he did with Maduro, what he did with Greenland, he brought attention to the vulnerabilities the United States has if we allow these things to go. And of course, we know what Iran is. I sat on those committees on foreign affairs when we were discussing the JCPOA, which is the Joint Committee or Plan of Action. It was the Iran nuclear deal. And under Trump and John Kerry and their IAEA inspector, the guy that was our person, his last name was Moisen or Moyen. He looked like a hippie from the 60s. He was our guy telling how this was a good deal. That Iran could not enrich nuclear uranium. They could not enrich uranium to nuclear grade, but they had been steadily doing this the whole time, John. And then we were supposed to be able to go in there as part of the IAEA, the International Energy and Atomic Commission. We were supposed to go in there anytime, any place. And Iran said, no, you can't do that. You can go where we want to take you. And so this whole time, since Obama said this was the best deal we could get, it was a terrible deal. And it allowed Iran to build constantly and increasing. And so they went from 3 to 5% enriched uranium, which is used for energy production. They're up to over 60% uranium enrichment, which is solely for nuclear weapons. So the point of that is something had to be done. How long do you wait? I don't think we should wait any longer. So President Trump took that and did that.
Well, talking about waiting, I probably have a personal reason for saying what I'm about to say, but going back to Reagan, okay, and I don't have to restate, I'm a supporter of Reagan. First president I ever voted for, Ronald Reagan. But if we ever needed a reason to take out Iran, when they hit our military, our Marines in that bunker over there and killed, I believe, over 200 of them in that bunker. One of them, by the way, was a young man from Hawthorne, was killed in that, a Marine. And his family still lives over there in Hawthorne. We should have taken them out then. We should have taken them out right then. I mean, what more do you need than 200 Marines killed in their sleep, so to speak, to do it? So we've had plenty of things. So I'm not letting anybody off the hook, Ted. But Donald Trump, I want to play just a short clip of his 8-minute speech when he announced the action, and then we'll come back and talk a little bit more about it. Check this out.
I say tonight that the hour of your freedom is at hand. Stay sheltered. Don't leave your home. It's very dangerous outside. Bombs will be dropping everywhere. When we are finished, take over your government. It will be yours to take. This will be probably your only chance for generations. For many years, you have asked for America's help, but you never got it. No president was willing to do what I am willing to do tonight. Now you have a president who is giving you what you want. So let's see how you respond. To the great, proud people of Iran, I say tonight that
he said it right there out of his mouth. No president has been willing to do what I am willing to do. What are your thoughts, Ted?
Well, again, you've got to appreciate what he says. He's a man of action. And over and over again, we've already talked about this, how people have talked about doing this. At some point, you've got to pull the trigger, I guess, or just say, we're going to do this. And he did that with Gaza and the Palestinian and Israelis. And he went to Iran and took out their facilities. He's doing it, as we talked about, in Venezuela, and now the major attack on Iran. You've got to nip these things. Well, I'm going to say nip them in the bud, but if you're going to do that, you would have done that 47 years ago. And I think it's a message sent to the other despotic leaders around the world. And I think Putin should take notice of this, along with Kim Jong-un and Xi Jinping of China. This is a different president, and we're in a different attitude stance in America on foreign policy. And we mean to secure our nation and protect it. I think it's very clear of what he's willing to do. There should be no doubt. And it goes back to what our president said. Theodore Roosevelt, walk softly, carry a big stick. President Reagan, peace through strength. And this is showing strength. And we've got to have people that have that ability to make these tough decisions and then work from there.
Yeah. And you know what really frustrates me and just pisses me off, Ted? There's a few things, but one of them is, and I'm not even necessarily saying that, we should be the policeman of the world or any of that stuff. And there's plenty to debate. But the thing that really gets me is when somebody say, oh, well, Iran does not pose an imminent threat to the United States of America. And I'm like, my God, how much more do they have to do? I mean, they have literally been saying death to America before they order their morning coffee. They've talked about wiping out Israel. They've literally, I mean, I'm not going to go through the whole list, but they killed 200 Marines. They tried to assassinate Donald Trump at least 2 times. I'm not even talking about the ones that are most publicized. We know that. They've admitted to that. I mean, what more do they need to do? Do they literally have to drop a nuclear bomb on us before they're an imminent threat? What do they have to do, Ted?
I think they've done enough where we had to act. And, I was one for, with Iran, when we were arguing these committee hearings, they said, well, Iran can't have a nuclear weapon. I'm like, who are we to tell another country what they can and do? My stance was, if you get a nuclear weapon, you've got the responsibility one. And if we even think you're thinking about pointing it in our direction, it's game over. And you look at all the mayhem they have caused, the Houthis, the Yemen rebels, Hezbollah, all these proxy groups that have done all this damage around the Middle East. They're part of the reason we went into Iraq and Afghanistan. I mean, they just kept that. They were just like a cancer growing, and it was just an irritant you can't get rid of. And it's grown and grown and grown, and the threat has gotten worse. You look at all the IEDs that killed our soldiers, Iran. You look at all the suicide bombers trained by Iran, and they're in South America, they're in Cuba, they're all over the hemisphere building these training camps for ISIS terrorists or radical jihad terrorists. So, yeah, at some point it's got to be squashed, and they got squashed.
Absolutely. Well, I want to play a clip now of Obama, because there was a point back when Iran took to the streets. They had the green sashes, I think they were wearing, this kind of thing, and they took to the streets, and they literally were massacred for doing it. And so you can understand why they might be a little reticent to take to the streets again. But I want to play Barack Obama talking about that time in Iran, and we'll come back and talk about it. Check this out.
Our allies in the region saying, let's look at Egypt's example, as opposed to Iran's example. I find it ironic that you've got the Iranian regime pretending to celebrate what happened in Egypt, when in fact they have acted in direct contrast to what happened in Egypt by gunning down and beating people who were trying to express themselves peacefully in Iran. And I also think that an important lesson, and I mentioned this last week, that we can draw from this is real change in these societies is not going to happen because of terrorism. It's not going to happen because you go around killing innocents. It's going to happen because people come together and apply moral force to a situation. That's what garners international support. That's what garners internal support. That's how you bring about lasting change.
That last statement, Ted, just is unbelievable. He talks about it's going to take moral force to overcome Iran. But at the same time, he's saying, oh, the people down south especially, they're clinging to their Bibles and their guns. I mean, what type of moral support is he talking about? There's just no... I'm just over the whole TDS thing, Trump derangement syndrome. It's just crazy. Here you got Obama talking about moral support when they're just being massacred in the streets, and he and we collectively did nothing. I mean, come on. It just really frustrates me.
Again, I had to deal with him and John Kerry and the foreign affairs and what they were doing. They were going to allow Iran to get a nuclear weapon, but it was just going to take 10 years from that time. And here they are at 60% uranium. Keep in mind, too, that Obama, in his book, Dreams of My Father, is the one that said if it came down to a fight on ideologies and religions, he'd have to side with his Muslim brotherhood. I mean, he said that. So, yeah, he wanted them to become more powerful because it weakens America and puts us in jeopardy. And just unconscionable. And you look at all the other garbage he's brought in, DEI, wokeism, transgender, the political divide, the racial divide in this country, that guy had an opportunity to make this country stronger, more united. He was the nidus of the biggest wedge I've seen in my lifetime to divide this country. And why we hear anything from him, he's been discredited over and over again. And I'm glad he's gone. Hope we don't see him again. We're going to see the influence of him, like in Madamis and other races like that around the country. So good riddance to him. And the next person you're going to play, good riddance to her.
Yeah, well, we've been playing some presidents. Now we're going to play a wannabe president, Hillary Clinton. And this was back when she was campaigning against Obama at the time, trying to become president. Listen to what she says about
really.
Iran. Check this out.
Well, the question was, if Iran were to launch a nuclear attack on Israel, what would our response be? And I want the Iranians to know that if I'm the president, we will attack Iran. Whatever stage of development they might be in their nuclear weapons program in the next 10 years, during which they might foolishly consider launching an attack on Israel, we would be able to totally obliterate them. That's a terrible thing to say, but those people who run Iran need to understand that, because that perhaps will deter them from doing something that would be reckless, foolish, and tragic.
I mean, Ted, that is some mighty tough talk right there.
Tough talk.
But they did nothing. All they did was talk. They did absolutely nothing. President Trump, love him, hate him, whatever, he doesn't just talk. He's a good talker, but he doesn't just talk. He backs it up. And I guarantee you, we got a lot more respect and fear of what the United States might do with Donald Trump in there than we ever did from Carter to Reagan to Hillary, the Clintons, all of them. Donald Trump has literally trumped them all.
Unintended. He's found his groove, and it's an uncomfortable one to be that kind of a leader with that kind of responsibility. Doing those kind of actions, I can't tell you how the weight of that has to be so heavy on him. And I go back to Yoho, the Korean defector, when I met in South Korea, when he said that your previous presidents have all been predictable and well educated. He goes, but this president, speaking of Trump's first term, he goes, we don't know where he stands and he's unpredictable. Well, I think here we are 8 years later. He's predictable and he's going to do what he says he's going to do. And so you're on warning, don't mess with the United States of America. And we're at a time now, John, with the geopolitical conflicts going on, that we need to have some clarity and people need to know where we stand. And Donald Trump's done that.
Well, what it reminds me of something my dad said about my mom years ago. He said, your mom is a very stubborn person. And he said, if she tells you that 3:30 this afternoon, she's going to stick a pitchfork in your behind, he said about 3:15, you better start looking because she's absolutely coming. And that's the thing about Trump. You might not know exactly when, but if he tells you he's going to do it, you better start looking over his shoulder because it's coming.
Sounds like you grew up in a tough household there, John. Don't mess with mama.
Yeah, my brother said, I learned to swim by my oldest brother when I was only about a year old, or 3 years old, I guess, throwing me into the middle of the pool and said, swim. And I can swim to this day. But anyway, we're going to take a quick commercial break. But before we do, I just want to remind you want to be part of this winning team, support this cause, make the call. Call Freddie. You'll see the little number there and join us because we are in the fight, ladies and gentlemen. Take us to break, Ted.
No, I think it's we got a lot to talk about, and this action, it is a stance against good and evil, is what I see, and we're going to talk more about that when we come back. Enjoy the break.
Hi there, this is Coach Steve Spurrier, and I want to let you know that by popular demand, Spurrier's Gridiron Grill's delicious brunch is now served in a premium buffet. You have spoken, we have listened, and we're now serving Gainesville's only elevated buffet, complete with an omelet station, ginger sage chicken sausage, shredded short rib, plus you can enjoy bottomless mimosas and Bloody Marys. So join us every Saturday and Sunday from 11 to 3 for the best brunch in town.
Well, there you heard it from the head ball coach himself. Come on down to Spurrier's Gridiron Grill. Join the party down here. We appreciate being in Coach Spurrier's house, so to speak. Well, Ted, what is next is kind of where I want to go from here, because everybody asks. I know we're still fighting and all that, but I think it's pretty obvious. Now, I hope no tragedies happen on our side. It's always possible, but clearly this regime at some level is going to collapse, whether it hangs on some and one of the current leaders becomes the leader or somebody new comes in. What are your thoughts about what do you think will happen next, and what should happen, assuming that they ultimately collapse at some level?
Freedom. I think freedom is what you're going to see next. You think about this, John, and I was thinking about this morning. We walk around here in the United States of America. We don't worry about an attack on our nation. We don't worry about speaking out against the government, good or bad. The things that you're hearing on the left about our government or Trump or people in office, how in any other country like Russia, Iran, China, North Korea, Cuba, and the list goes on. If you speak like that, you're going to be arrested, most likely put to death. And you look at the Iranian people, they protested like you brought up under Obama with their green scarves on, and they got annihilated. They did that again a couple weeks ago, and the estimate I've heard 15,000 to 35,000 people were killed in the streets because they were protesting. They don't have the right to protest. We in our country, we can protest. People are abusing that, but we have the right and the freedom of speech and assembly that we can do those things. So what I see is coming is freedom if they'll grasp the concept of that and form a coalition of like-minded people and just say, we're never going back to that. That's what I see in the future.
Yeah, well, I loved what the president said in his opening speech about the attack when we played part of it, where he's told the Iranian people, don't go out right now. Stay sheltered, stay safe. Basically, we don't want to harm you, and wait. And when the time is right and we've eliminated all this threat, then you go. So he didn't tell them to run out in the streets and all of that. It was very orchestrated in that sense. But one of the people, obviously, that jumps to the top of the list, certainly he's on the TV constantly, is the Crown Prince, the former Shah of Iran's son. And he and I are roughly, I think, the same age. And I'm not necessarily knocking him at all, but I don't know, maybe I'm totally wrong, but there's something about him that I'm cautious about. If that's who the Iranian people want and do, but I don't know if we're substituting one type of ruler for another. I'd like it to be a bit more organic myself, but you may have more knowledge about that issue than me, because it's just a feeling I get, and it could be totally wrong.
No, I think your feeling's absolutely right. The people I talked to in D.C. said he will be a figurehead. He will start a movement, but he probably won't be the one. I think, like you said, it'll be somebody organic, somebody that'll come up through the ashes. And that's really who it needs to be. It's not somebody that the West picks out or, the IRGC regime picks out. It needs to be somebody that is new, that has the heart and the best for Iran that they want to move forward with. If he goes in, the Shah goes in, the son of the Shah. It's just like rehashing old things. And you got to remember why the revolution broke out in the first place back in the 80s. We don't want to have to start that again. They need new blood in there.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, some people want to talk about, quote, the Venezuela model, where you cut off the head of the snake and you let that vice president rise up. I think the jury's still out on that a bit, but it's a very, very different situation, mainly because of the religious fanaticism. But I don't see how you can allow someone who was part of the regime over there that literally chanted death to America, death to Israel, all of that kind of stuff. I don't see how that works at all. It would have to be extremely interim, because I just don't see the Iranian people putting up with that for very long myself.
No, that's why they're willing to go out in the streets and get slaughtered by the thousands because they want freedom. Then again, that's an innate thing. Everybody on the planet wants is liberties and freedoms. They just don't know how to get them when you're in a theocracy like the Ayatollah had. Keep in mind the rules they had. It was strict Sharia law. And if you don't follow Islam, you're an infidel. You're going to be put to death. You're going to be stoned. They have active beheadings and hangings over there in the hundreds every year, if not the thousands by the end of a year. This is what the Iranian people have put up for years, 47 years. They want to get away from that. You can't have anybody with a theocratic mindset that what's going to be strict Sharia law. It won't work in the modern day. To practice Islam, that's people's choice in our country. For freedom of religion, they'll come up with their own rules and how to govern, and we just hope it's done sooner than later. We'd like to see them have elections, I'm sure, not the puppet elections or the scam elections like they have in Venezuela, Cuba, and these other Russia and things like that. So let's just hope that the right people get in there in a hurry, and I'm sure they already got a coalition of people ready to do that.
Well, maybe since Iran is clearly south of the equator, we could put Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez over there.
I wouldn't wish that on any country.
But I love how she talks about south of the equator with Venezuela. I think Iran is pretty far north of the equator, but so is Venezuela for that matter. I had somebody tell me that maybe it should be Tucker Carlson should be the next head of Iran. Now, that's kind of a joke if you get it, but anyway,
we saw the meme with Marco Rubio with a turban on, and he looked like the Ayatollah, and he'll be the next supreme leader of Iran.
While he's taking out the trash at the Oval, Marco Rubio is doing everything from taking out the trash to leading South America, Venezuela, Cuba. I mean, that guy's got many. I mean, he's got many jobs, man.
I can't top that, John.
One of the interesting comments from world leaders I thought came from Zelensky of Ukraine. I don't know if you saw this, but he came out very much in favor of what Donald Trump's doing, possibly for his own reasons. But he said, unfortunately, Ukraine knows all too well what this is about. He said, although Ukrainians never threatened Iran, the Iranian regime chose to become Putin's accomplice and supplied munitions and stuff for them. I thought that was interesting. Putin said he condemned the attacks on Iran as unprovoked and unjustified, emphasizing diplomacy while offering no direct military support. So he's all for diplomacy. And of course, Xi out of China, he called for an immediate ceasefire and all that kind of stuff. I mean, give me a break, these guys. It's unbelievable.
I can't believe Putin said that. Unprovoked attack was unjustified. And here he is in a 4-year war of an unprovoked attack that he just these guys are so out of base. And Xi Jinping, he's got to be worried because he gets a lot of oil from Iran. He got about 20% of his oil, the way I understood it, from Venezuela. And again, I think I don't have the information the president, obviously, and his team have, but I know this is going to put a squeeze on Xi Jinping, which is our second largest existential threat to our country. And you think of how Xi controls rare earth minerals, and they control our pharmaceuticals. They control manufacturing. So many things they control. How do you curb that and push against that? And I think what we're going to see is you're going to see energy is going to be a way to force Xi's hand to back off on some of this other stuff. And if that is the underlying plan, this is a brilliant move. And I brought that up at that think tank I was at in Italy. And they said, oh, you're giving Trump and his team too much credit. I don't think so. You look at who he's got on that team. And, you're talking about Hegseth earlier, and this is just a little aside. This is probably the best administration I have ever seen, from Pete Hegseth to Marco Rubio to Mike Waltz, Kristi Noem, Tom Homan. I mean, these people are serious. And then we don't ever hear about Linda McMahon, but she's making strides of reform in education. And don't forget what Doge did to come in there and put the focus on these terrible programs in USAID that got rid of them. They got rid of the whole agency, which I never thought would happen. I'm glad it happened. And there's some programs that need to be brought back because they're good for us and recipient nations.
Yeah, well, one of the more interesting calculations, maybe miscalculations that Iran has done is, the Arab world over there, and I'm lumping them in a pretty big brush. But basically, I mean, for instance, Saudi Arabia is a 100% enemy of Iran and vice versa. There's no question about that. And many others are. But they've basically, in private, apparently they've supported us. But in public, they've been very reticent to say much, including, Qatar and all of that. I mean, they've actually funded things and been in joint with Iran. But Iran has now, and I'm not saying it was the Ayatollah, because apparently he was killed fairly quickly in this, but they struck out their missiles to the wider Gulf region, and they hit people that had been quiet about them and had somewhat supportive of them. But now they're kind of bringing the whole coalition that Trump has been trying to put together with Israel to oppose Iran. I just don't understand what that means, why they did that. Is it a last shot desperation, or is there some calculus in there that I'm missing?
No, I think you're absolutely right. And the interesting thing is, I thought more the European Union would be chastising Trump, but what they're doing is exactly what you're doing. You said they are saying how bad Iran is for attacking these non-participant countries, but Iran is attacking them because they support U.S. air bases and military. So they're going after them because they think any threat where America is a threat to them. And so if these countries are going to harbor American troops, it was interesting. When I was over in the UAE, we had a base over there and they had porta potties. They didn't have permanent bathroom facilities. And I asked about that, and they said, well, if we build a permanent bathroom facility, it looks like you're here permanently, and we don't want that. But hell, we've been over there for 20, 30 years. And they said, yeah, we want your help, but we don't want people to think you're permanent here. And so Iran knows all of this, and so they're bombing those places that harbor our people. Our hopes is that they don't go after any of our aircraft carriers. That would be a game changer. You'll see it escalate on our side and to the detriment of Iran.
Well, the only Islamic nations that seem to be kind of lukewarm in their support for our attack against Iran is actually England and France. But I'm sorry, Ted, you know me, man. But people tend to forget this, that they think all this happened in Iran a couple of days ago. But the whole Islamic revolution, as we say, started in 79. The Grand Ayatollah, who was the granddaddy of it all, before he came to Iran, back to Iran, because he was living in exile. I'm sure you already know this, Ted, but where was he hiding, so to speak, and being in full support of? It was none other than France, was it not?
In France. Sacre bleu. And probably drinking French wine. That's... Yeah, they have been supportive of that. And the French, you think of how they helped us in the Revolutionary War. I mean, they were strong warrior types. And, to look at them today, it's just a breakdown of that society. No, I shouldn't say that. That's not fair to say. But they don't stand where they should. And you think how many times America's come and helped them in the different conflicts. And, they harbored him back then because, it wasn't known what he was going to do. Now that they know, they should be standing up with us firm with what's going on. And the good thing about this is Iran was supplying Putin with IEDs and weapons. Keep in mind, Iran was supplying the cartel in Mexico with IEDs and things like that. They were made in Iran. And you would think the French would say, enough's enough. We need to get rid of these bad players. And I wish they would all come together in a consensus with Trump and just say, we're going to eliminate all these people or this ideology. I don't want to say people because then you'd be a Hitler. But eliminate that ideology and they're in a free world for that.
Well, something, I didn't put it in the notes, Ted, so I don't want to blindside it with you, but I know you're going
Oh,
to
you're
have,
straying. You're
I know,
straying.
I know you're going to have some strong feelings about this. I got a friend, and I'm going to let him remain anonymous.
Well,
He's
that's
been,
good.
he's,
That's
he's,
good. You
ex,
have one.
I have at least one who he's a very conservative, extremely conservative. And he's Republican, but probably more of a libertarian. And he's been posting a lot about the unconstitutionality of what Trump is doing. And I'm not really disputing some aspects of that. But here's the thing. Do I wish that we had a functioning constitutional government? Yes, I absolutely do. Do I want to get back to regular order and all the things you and I have talked about? I absolutely do. But to me, what's unique about this is if we let Iran get a nuclear weapon, there's no doubt in my mind they will use it against the West. They certainly would obliterate Israel, and if they could hit us with it, they would. There's just no doubt about that in my mind. So that changes some of the calculus of it. But here's the biggest problem I have with my friend's argument. And I don't disagree with him, Ted, in a sense, but our Congress and our government has been post-constitutional, in my view, for quite some time. Do I want to get back to that? Absolutely. I actually think Trump is our best chance to get back to that. But Congress is just inept in general. And I'm talking about Republicans, Democrats, whatever. They just don't want to work. They don't want to do the job. Even the Republicans during the government shutdown and all that, they took off. They didn't come. They still got paid. They could have been working. They could have been working on things to hit the ground running, but they weren't. So absent, the vacuum, something's going to fill it. And since we don't have any functioning Congress, really, I don't see what we have a choice but to have, and I know this could usher in, quote, a dictator, and I'm not calling for that, but considering all that's happening, how can Trump not act? If he doesn't act, what are we going to do? We're just going to be managing the decline, like Marco Rubio said of the West. So I'm really frustrated about that because I agree in principle with my friend, but the reality is, Ted, and I'll say this and I'll shut up, in my opinion, we've been post-constitutional for a while now. What are your thoughts?
Oh, no doubt
Am
about
I
it.
way off base?
No, you're right on, and that's what people need to realize. You talk about an ineptness of Congress. I was there and I saw it firsthand, and I was probably part of that. Just because you're trying to get something accomplished, and I had people chastise me when I first got up there. They said that was unconstitutional because it was funding something and there was unconstitutional funding. I said everything in government is probably unconstitutional that we do today compared to what our founders had. I said, but I think I used this last time. If the boat is sinking and I've got a bucket, but it's an unconstitutionally provided bucket, you don't want me to bail out the boat. You'd rather let it sink. And they said, yeah. And I'm like, I can't do that. You look at how they've put this stuff off for all these years. Immigration's a perfect one. The ineptness of Congress. Reagan gave amnesty back in the 80s to the Cubans, the Mariel boat lift, 3 million people, I think it was. Congress had 40 years to do something about it. It hasn't been done. It's just rhetoric. Trump came in and says, we're closing the border, period. Look at how much better off this country is. And of course, people say, well, look at ICE and all that. Well, ICE wouldn't be there had the rules been followed in the beginning. And we've got to get back to that. And this is, as ugly as this is, it's getting back to that. It's like I deal a lot with global health and food security when I go up to DC. A lot of those organizations, the NGOs, were dependent on USAID, and that's the program that Trump obliterated. And people are all upset, oh, this wasn't the right way to do it. I'm like, there's not a good way to do it. He's got a 2-year window between when he got elected until the midterms. And, you can't do it legislatively. You've got to rip the Band-Aid off and rebuild. And that's what you're seeing now. You're going to see a change in the status quo of the world order. And I think you're going to see America come out stronger. And I think you're going to see our allies, and even the ones that have strayed being allies like Canada. I think you're going to see, as ugly as this is, this was something that needed to happen. I'm glad he did it and we didn't. but we're going to follow that. And I think you're going to see that come out of this because our world is split, John. You've got liberal democracies or you've got authoritarianism. Or you can throw a theocracy in there too, which is authoritarianism. So those are your two choices. And we're starting to get it pushed over to liberal democracies to where people have choice of freedom and liberties.
Yeah, and I want to kind of touch base on something, and I don't know what your experience has been in this, Ted, but, there are a lot of Iranians in the United States of America right now, a lot of them. And, of course, we think about, quote, sleeper cells and all that, and I'm not discounting any of that. But I know quite a few Iranians. I wouldn't say we're close friends. I just know them. And I have sensed from Iranian people that they have probably more than almost any other group of immigrants, especially from the Middle East, have come here and plugged into our system and that kind of thing. There are like almost 500,000 of them in California. I don't know how many of them are registered to vote, but at least a couple 100,000 for sure. It's going to be interesting to see because they've been dancing in the streets here lately. And one of the things I've really observed, because I've seen it right here in Gainesville, I have a very close friend of mine, a Jewish friend of mine, and he's an avid soccer player. And he has a league that's made up of Iranians and Jewish people, and he's from Israel. And they all seem to get along unlike any other. And we see Israeli flags and Iranian flags in the streets right now. It's really an interesting dynamic that could happen here in this country that could actually affect the midterms in some places. So I don't know what your experience has been, but my experience with Iranian people that were either naturalized to America or born here since the fall of the Shah and all is actually pretty positive.
Oh, I think so. I think it really is. Anybody that is born in a country, they have pride in their country, but they leave it because they want a better opportunity. You look at Iran, Cuba, Venezuela, the list goes on. These people would rather be in their own country and build a strong country. But if you don't have a system that allows that or creates opportunity, you're going to flee because you want better for your family and your children. And I think you're going to see people going back. I think when Cuba falls, you're going to see Cuban Americans go down there because they got to have love of their country. That's their identity is Cuba. And I think you're going to see that, John. And I think you're absolutely good people. I know a lot of Iranians myself, and we've worked with them. And they are entrepreneurs, and they want the best for their country. I mean, doctors, scientists, all these. And again, I think you're going to see them go back because they'll have opportunity in their country, and they can be a part of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well,
I hope they do vote, and I hope they vote the right way.
Well, you just gave me an idea about Marco Rubio because you're talking about Cuba, and we probably need to put Marco. We need to take what's the island that's I think the English control it right there in the middle of the Atlantic. I can't think of the name of it. It's
the British Virgin Islands.
No, a tropical no, it's God. I don't know why I can't think of the name of it. But we'd probably need to put Rubio on that island. We'd take that island over and put him. That way he could work from Iran to Cuba.
There you are.
Back and forth. Maybe Greenland because it's up there.
Yeah. There you are being a colonist builder. Colonial empire.
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to totally switch gears right now in the few minutes we got left because I got to bring this up because, it's always in the news, the Epstein stuff. Well, we had Hillary Clinton give closed-door testimony last week, and then I think it was Friday that Bill Clinton gave testimony. Well, first with Hillary, she said in her thing that she said this afterwards. She came out and made this statement. It wasn't just in closed door. She said, I've never met Jeffrey Epstein. I knew Giselle Maxwell or whatever her name is on the periphery, even though she was at Chelsea's wedding. She said, I knew her a little bit, but I never met Epstein. Now, Epstein is documented that he went to the White House 17 times during the time that Bill Clinton was presidency. Knowing Hillary like you do and like we do collectively, is it even possible that Jeffrey Epstein went there 7 times and Hillary didn't have something to say about it? I don't think that's even
Oh,
possible.
she would be there, knowing Bill's history of running around and having women all over, even in the White House and the Oval Office. She's going to be monitoring that. And then with Epstein, knowing the slime ball he was, you think she's going to let Bill be alone with him? I don't think so. Keep in mind, Epstein funded the Clinton Foundation pretty heavily. And I thought it was really interesting when under I think Trump won, they put the focus on the Clinton Foundation. They shut it down, got rid of the money. And she knew all about this stuff. I mean, I want to encourage people to read her testimony. It was a 2-page testimony. And she had the committee, the oversight committee. She wouldn't come down to Congress. They had to fly up to her place, I think it was in New York, to get testimony, 2 pages. And it makes it sound like she's the victim. I didn't do anything wrong. This is a witch hunt, and woe is me. And I didn't know anything about him. Yes, you did. Quit lying. I mean, that's all she knows how to do, lie. Can you imagine where she would have been as president, and then followed by Biden and Harris, and then followed by Harris? Ooh, that's a scary thought, John.
It is. Well, Harris came out, since you mentioned her, she came out, of course, and said, I don't support the attack on Iran. I mean, like anybody really, I can't even imagine.
Yeah, who cares? Who cares? Yeah.
But back to this Epstein thing, Bill Clinton, now he hadn't made a statement since then, I don't think, but he testified behind closed doors, and he has not denied what I'm about to say, but according to Comer, who's the chairman of that.
Jamie Comer, yeah.
Yeah, he said that Bill basically exonerated Trump by saying that he, in any discussions with Trump, and of course he went to Trump's wedding, that with any discussions with Trump, that he never heard anything other than chastising of Jeffrey Epstein and that kind of thing. And basically he said that he didn't have any knowledge that Trump had any real personal relationship with Epstein, and what little bit he had was anti-Epstein. So I thought that was pretty interesting.
It is. And I think in Hillary's testimony, it was said something like Trump's name was mentioned 10,000, some large number in the Epstein files. Again, you brought out a good point about the Epstein files. We need to get beyond this. We're $38 trillion in debt and growing $1 trillion a year in debt from the interest rates. This is where the inept Congress needs to get together and say, let's focus on the 5 existential threats to America. And, until then, you're going to have the circus that's going on up there. In the meantime, I've had members of Congress talking about, we need to get our work done, but then they're raising money and raising a lot of money. But when it comes back to their interview the next week, they're saying, what's wrong with Congress is they spend too much time raising money. It's like that's how stupid they think the American people are.
Well, it just popped in my head, Ted, the island. I'm talking about Bermuda. We ought to take over Bermuda, and we should put Marco Rubio right there in Bermuda. He could have his own office there. And think about it, strategically located. He could get over to Iran. He could get down to Cuba. He could get up to Greenland. And he could come back to Washington, pretty easily. So I think we should make Marco Rubio the dictator of Bermuda and give him that job right now.
Ambassador in charge.
Yeah.
I can tell you're a logistics guy.
I think about all kind of things, Ted. Some of us are sicker than
others.
Oh, that's good. Well, I hope you've enjoyed the show as much as we've enjoyed bringing it to you. Please like what we're doing, share what we're doing, make that call to call Freddie, join this winning team, help us keep this cause going, because voices like ours are certainly needed. Well, Ted, have a great week, and I guess I'll see you on Friday, either on camera or somewhere like that, and I'm sure we'll talk between now and then. But take us out, sir.
No, I'll see you on Friday. We look forward to seeing people on Friday. And our goal is to educate, motivate, and activate people. We've got elections coming up. If we lose the midterm, the majority, if the Republican Party loses the midterms. All this goes back. Everything is put on pause, and it's going to revert back to where it was, and we don't want that. We've got too many things going. We need to work at what the changes that have been made, and we need to make sure they're permanent changes, and we build this country stronger, and that will lead to a safer world and a brighter future for us here and home, for our families and our grandchildren and the next generations, but not just here, but around the world. So y'all take care. Appreciate it. Appreciate the support. God bless.
Absolutely. And no matter what your politics are, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you'll agree with me on this. Please pray for our troops and their families.
Absolutely. Good point, John. Thank you.
Peace out, everybody.